Okay. Hi, this is Pastor Josh from First Baptist of Queen. Thank you for joining us on our journey reading through the Bible in a year. This is day 24 of reading the Bible through, and we are going to start in Genesis 48. If you need a Bible reading plan and want to follow along, we have those. You can message us, and I will send you the PDF of that reading plan. Or if you're local, you can come by the church, and we'll give you one. Print one off for you as well. But today we are in Genesis 48, so we're going to start, and then we'll jump over into the New Testament for a minute, go to Psalms, and then Proverbs to close out. So Genesis chapter 48, starting in verse 1. After this, Joseph was told, "Behold, your father is ill." So he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and it was told to Jacob, "Your son Joseph has come to you." Then Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed, and Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me, and said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make you a company of peoples, and will give this land to your offspring after you for an everlasting possession." So he's telling Joseph of what God had told him about the promise, about the promise of what was to come. Everlasting possession, speaking of heaven, verse 5. "And now your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine as Reuben and Simeon are. And the children that you fathered after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. As for me, when I came from Padan, to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was still some distance to go in Ephrath. And I buried her on the way to Ephrath," that is, Bethlehem. So this is very significant, okay? What Jacob, Israel, what he's saying is, he is basically adopting Joseph's first two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and making them full-fledged sons of Israel, or tribes of Israel, as they will come to be known later on. Verse 8, "When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, 'Who are these?' Joseph said to his father, 'These are my sons, whom God has given me here.' And he said, 'Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them.' Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see." That's why he didn't recognize them right off. "So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, 'I never expected to see your face. And behold, God has let me see your offspring also.'" He says God has given him an abundance, over and abundant what he thought he was going to have. Verse 12, "Then Joseph removed them from his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near to him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hand." So Joseph's bringing his sons up so that the older son is under Israel's right hand, and the younger under the left hand, so that the older son gets the right hand blessing. And Israel reaches out his hands, and he crosses them and puts them on the opposite kids' heads. The right hand on the older son, or on the younger son, and the left hand on the older son. Let's see. "And he laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, 'The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys. And in them let my name be carried on, in the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth.' When Joseph saw how his father had laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head." So Joseph sees this. He's like, "Hold up. You're giving the blessing of the older to the younger, and the blessing of the younger to the older. That's not the way this works, Father." And Joseph said to his father, "Not this way, my father. Since this one is the firstborn, put your right hand on his head. Now remember, Jacob, or Israel, was the younger son also. And so it is somewhat significant that he's doing this. It's very significant, but it plays into his past as well. Verse 19, but his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, by you Israel will pronounce blessings, saying, God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, behold, I'm about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you again to the land of your fathers. So Israel's blessing pronouncement is in a way a prophecy of what would come. The tribe of Ephraim would become large, would become great, rivaling Judah. I mean, it would be huge and important. And so this comes to pass. So Jacob says, I'm about to die. Verse 22, moreover, I have given to you rather than to your brothers one mountain slope that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow. Chapter 49, verse 1. Then Jacob called his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you what shall happen to you in the days to come. Assemble and listen, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. And so he's going to speak a word over each of his sons. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the first fruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence. Because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. So he is speaking to the sin that Reuben did in sleeping with one of his father's wives. Verse 5, Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul come not into their counsel. O my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willingness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So Simeon and Levi were murderers. They're the ones who attacked the town of Shechem with such severity. And Jacob, Israel, is speaking out against that. Now he gets to the fourthborn, Judah. Judah, who has now shown himself faithful both to Joseph and to Jacob. He says, Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion and as a lioness, who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Binding his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He has washed his garments in wine, and his vesture in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. He speaks of everyone coming and bowing down to Judah. He speaks of the scepter of authority being in Judah's hand. He speaks of Judah being the lion. This is a prophecy about the coming of Jesus. Jesus coming from the tribe of Judah. And the Messiah, the Son of God, coming from Judah's descendants. Verse 13, Zebulun shall dwell at the shores of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. So speaking into where Zebulun's tribe will settle one day. Issachar is a strong donkey, crouching between the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good and that the land was pleasant, so he bowed his shoulder to bear and became a servant at forced labor. Speaking of Issachar becoming a worker, a diligent worker, but still a worker. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way. Serpents do not have a good connotation by any stretch. A viper by the path that bites the horse's heels so that his rider falls backward. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. Hoping for the salvation that Dan may find one day. Raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid at their heels. So Gad will be attacked, but Gad will fight back. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal delicacies. So great wealth and special food will come out of the tribe of Asher. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns. Great freedom comes from Naphtali. Joseph is a fruitful bow by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely, yet his bow remained unmoved. Speaking of his brothers attacking him. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of your father who will help you, by the Almighty who will bless you, with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents. Up to the bounties of the everlasting hills, may they be on the head of Joseph and on the brow of him who is set apart from his brothers. Speaking of Joseph being attacked, but God protected him in the midst of all of the attacks that he faced. God took care of Joseph everywhere he went, and he experienced great blessings because of that. Verse 27, Benjamin is a ravenous wolf in the morning, devouring the prey, and at evening dividing the spoil. Benjamin goes out and attacks a great many things and conquers many places, which he will one day, as the first king of Israel, Saul, will come from the tribe of Benjamin. Verse 28, all these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each with a blessing suitable to him. Then he commanded them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field at Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah, his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah, his wife. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites. So it is also very important, significant. Even though Rachel was his favorite wife, possibly there ended up being affection and even love towards Leah, that he would honor her by placing her in this burial place of honor with Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, that she would be placed in such a grave as that. Verse 33, when Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into his bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Now over to Matthew chapter 15, verse 29. Jesus went on from there and walked beside the Sea of Galilee. And he went up on the mountain and sat down there. And great crowds came to him, bringing with them the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others. And they put them at his feet, and he healed them. So that the crowd wondered when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled healthy, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they glorified the God of Israel. Then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion on the crowd because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And I am unwilling to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way. So people came to Jesus, and he's been teaching them for 3 days, and they've run out of food. And Jesus is having great compassion on the people. And he turns to his disciples and tells them this. And the disciples said to him, verse 33, where are we to get enough bread in such a desolate place to feed such a crowd? It would seem to be Jesus' intention to have gone specifically to this desolate place, far away from all kinds of food, and begin to teach these people for this specific moment for his disciples as a reminder of something he has done previously. And Jesus said to them, "How many loaves do you have?" They said, 7, and a few small fish. Now this should spark something in their mind because he's, fed the 5,000 before. But it doesn't click for them yet. And directing the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds, and they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 7 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. Those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And after sending away the crowds, he got into a boat and went to the region of Magadan. Now, the disciples seemingly had forgotten the previous miracle Jesus had done in feeding the 5,000. Sometimes we get just as distracted by what is going on around us that when we face a situation that seems impossible, that seems difficult and seems as though there is no answer and no way out, we forget God has done this before. God has taken care of us and provided for us before. So why should we worry that He won't do it now because He's already done it? And so He's reminding the disciples, depend on me, rely on me, and you will find not only provision, but generous provision, abundant provision. Chapter 16, verse 1. And the Pharisees and Sadducees came, and to test Him, as they always did, they asked Him to show them a sign from heaven. "Give us a miracle, Jesus." He answered them, "When it is evening, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the time. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given it except the sign of Jonah." So He left them and departed. So the Pharisees and Sadducees were basically coming to Jesus and saying, if you are the Son of God, prove it by doing a miracle right now. If you don't do a miracle, you're not Him, so you better do it, or we're not going to believe it. And Jesus said, well, there's been a whole bunch of signs. There's been a whole bunch of miracles, and you haven't believed it yet. You've seen all of this. It says you can interpret how the weather's going to be based upon the sky, based upon your own experiences, but observing the spiritual things, which He says, you guys are the spiritual guys, you cannot determine whether or not now is the time for the coming of the Son of God, and He's here right in front of you. He says you're missing everything that's there. He says it's evil to demand a sign. It's wicked. It's adulterous. You say you pursue God, but you're pursuing other things. You want to worship the signs instead of the one who's doing the signs. He says, I'll give you a sign, the sign of Jonah. Now, the sign of Jonah was Jonah being in the belly of the fish for 3 days and then coming out of the belly of the fish as though he has risen from the dead, as Jesus will. So the sign of Jonah is Jesus' death and resurrection. Verse 5. When the disciples reached the other side, they had forgotten to bring any bread. And Jesus said to them, now remember, they've had the feeding of the 4,000, Pharisees and Sadducees come, and disciples are now out of bread. Jesus said to them, watch and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And they began discussing it among themselves, saying, we brought no bread. But Jesus, aware of this, said, oh, you of little faith. Why are you discussing among yourselves the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive? Do you not remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many baskets you gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many baskets you gathered? How is it that you fail to understand that I do not speak about bread? Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Then they understood that He did not tell them to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. A little bit of leaven affects the entire batch of dough. This little bit of teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees affects the entire group. So you need to beware what you allow to influence you on a consistent basis. You need to be constantly paying attention, because just a little bit can have dynamic impact on the whole life. Let's go over to Psalm 20. To the choir master, a psalm of David, verse 1. May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you. May He send you help from the sanctuary and give you support from Zion. May He remember all your offerings and regard with favor your burnt sacrifices. May He grant you your heart's desire and fulfill all your plans. May we shout for joy over your salvation. And in the name of our God, set up our banners. May the Lord fulfill all your petitions. Now I know that the Lord saves His anointed. He will answer him from His holy heaven with the saving might of His right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. They collapse and fall, but we rise and stand upright. O Lord, save the King. May He answer us when we call. He's saying God answers prayer. He says other people will trust in their own might. Other people will trust in their tools. But we trust in God, and He will provide for us. He will take care of us. They collapse, they fall, but we rise and stand upright because God is with us. Proverbs chapter 4, starting at verse 20. My son, be attentive to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings. Let them not escape from your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and healing to all their flesh. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Put away from you crooked speech, and put devious talk far from you. Let your eyes look directly forward, and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, and then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Turn your foot away from evil. So pay attention to wisdom that comes from the Lord, and you will find the way forward. Keep this wisdom within your heart, and those words will be healing to you. They will keep vigilant towards those words. Don't allow the other influences to come in and pull you away from the path of the Lord. Put away from you the crooked speech, the perverted speech, the speech of the unbelievers, of those who don't know the Lord. Devious talk, talk that would deceive, that is malicious and intentionally not encouraging. Let your eyes look directly forward. Keep looking to the direction God would have you go, and let your gaze be straight. Don't look to the right, to the left. Don't look to the sides. Keep your eyes on God and where He wants you to be. And pay attention. Ponder the path of your feet. Be intentional in where you go and what you do. And all your ways will be sure. Don't swerve. Turn your foot away from evil and only to the direction God would have you go. So thank you for being with us today on day 24 of our reading the Bible through every day this year. Join us again tomorrow as we read day 25.